Hello and welcome everyone to this new video tutorial in which we're going to be talking about navigating the node tree and the layer stack. So let me enter into our project here and enter the LiveFX tab with a clip, and over here on the right side swipe in the right side stack and switch to the node tree. Now right now we only have one node here, which is our QuickTime file reader node, which has these settings, but every node can have layers on them like such, and every layer here can have any number of grading tools that we have here applied to it. And even more, a layer can also have a fill or a matte feeding into it in the form of another video clip or a still frame, lower thirds with alpha, or a plugin. So how does all this look? First of all, let me refresh the node tree here by swiping it out and back in, and we can see the layers here as well. As you can see, we can select the layers here in the node tree as well as here in the layer stack. That's doing the exact same thing. However, my personal preference is to not display any layer stacks in the node tree. And there's a setting down here in the user preferences. If you scroll down a little bit here in the LiveFX tab, there's layers in schematic, and it allows you to select whether to display any and all layers in the node tree, or only layers that have a fill mud on them, or no layers at all. And for the remainder of this tutorial, I will set this to no layers. And if I now refresh the node tree, I'm back to just having a single node. Now, if I nest this node using this button, then what I've basically done is add a serial node. So the output of this node is being fed onto this node. And the way I use the interface here is to navigate nodes using the node tree, and to navigate layers on any given node, I use the layer stack here that I can toggle from here or by swiping to the left edge of the screen. Now, the layer stack grows from top to bottom, meaning that layer 3 right now is actually the topmost layer. Now, let me give you an example of what this could look like. Delete all this again, create a layer and call it warm. And now I'm gonna dial in, oops, stay with me. I'm going to dial in a warm grade, okay, something like this. All right, I can toggle the layer on and off to see the effect, and now I'll add another layer and call this contrast. And I'll go to the curves, and I will dial in a little bit of contrast here. Come on. There we go. Something like this. All right, now I have warmth and I have contrast. Now the output of this node with the two layers on it is being piped into our nest node. Our nest node has its own layer stack. So in here I could create a layer and call it desat for all I care, and desaturate the whole thing a little bit, something like this. Let's make it 50%. Okay. So the nest node has the desat layer on it, and my source QuickTime node has the warm and contrast layers on it. But there's more. So for instance, let's say I wanted to do a composite here, and create another layer, and I'll call this Vegas, and go to the fill mud menu. Every layer can have a fill or a matte or both, and the parameters here in this menu correspond to whichever tab here is selected, fill or matte. And as you can see, in the top field you would drop the fill, in the lower field you would drop the matte. Let me right click and choose import and grab the Las Vegas clip here. It gets attached to my cursor, and I can just drop it into the fill tab. Alright, so if I pause the video, I can get the little preview here, and in the node tree we can see that this node here, the Vegas clip, feeds onto our nest node as a fill, meaning it will end up on a layer here. If I disable that layer, I don't see the video. If I enable it, I can see it. Now, let's scale this layer down a little bit, something like this, and move it over here. Now, if we wanted to color grade our Vegas video, we can obviously just select the layer here and do some color grading there, like such. But if our grade is more complex and consists out of keyers and qualifiers and whatnot, we can also select the node down here and create a layer here to maybe just make it a little bit more contrasty. Maybe use the color wheels to make it super warm. Going back to the top level node, we can see that effect here. We can of course also lock our viewport to the currently selected node and then go down here, and the layer stack will reflect our currently selected node, right? So if I go over here, I get warm and contrast back. If I select this node, I just have this layer that is super warm, all right? And yeah, I can color grade this way, create new layers, and use the curves, saturate green, whatever. All right, back to the top level node. What I can also do is create a layer, and I'll just call it plugin for clarity's sake. Go to plugins and choose, for instance, my lens blur plugin here. And I will apply that on a layer. Okay, so now on this plugin layer, I have my lens blur. I can dial that in. But what if I wanted to blur just the Vegas clip or just the background? If I wanted to blur just the background, what I can do is just grab this layer and drop it behind the Vegas layer, like such. That works. Right? If I wanted to blur just the Vegas clip, I would delete that here, go to my Vegas clip, and create a layer here, call it plugin, plugins, and apply the lens blur here. And I can dial in the blur more or less, whichever way I want. And now, as you can see, in the node tree, we have our plugin node feeding into the Vegas clip onto the plugin layer here. And then the Vegas clip with all its layers on it feeds into the top level nest node. Now here's one important thing about the node menu. Right now with the nest node, which is a node that can do transforms like image scaling and offsetting and stuff like that, this menu is just labeled node. And to see the node controls of any selected node, you have to either have no layer selected or the primaries layer selected. As soon as I select one of the secondary layers here, as you can see, the menu is empty. Except if, let's go to the Vegas clip here. The Vegas clip is a QuickTime file reader node, so it is labeled QuickTime. The node menu is labeled QuickTime, it's dynamically labeled, and it gives me the options to decode the underlying QuickTime file. And here again, if I select any of the secondary layers, this menu is empty, except if there is a plugin or some other kind of node feeding onto this layer. In this case, it's the lens blur plugin, and so the node menu labeled lens blur shows me the parameters to configure the lens blur. All right. Okay. What else should we be talking about? Let's maybe go to a more practical setup in a LiveFX context. Actually, let me delete the nest node again, and in here delete all our color grading. Okay, and do a projection setup. So I'll grab this clip, drop it in here, frustum projection, camera tracker, 3D for all I care, and hit create. So what are we looking at here? This is a very simple node tree. As you can see, there's our source node, the QuickTime file reader node, where we can create our color grade layer, where we can add contrast. Come on, here we go. Some contrast, something like this. Okay. And the output of this clip feeds into the projection node. which is called frustum to wall. And in here you have all the parameters to deal with the projection. Now, every node can have an input or multiple thereof. So in terms of the projection node here, if I go to the inputs menu, I can see the two inputs this node offers us, a foreground and a background. The background is empty currently, hence the foreground basically gets duplicated here to the background. If I lift my frustum up a little bit, okay, now we have a frustum here with the camera looking around. My background is empty, but I can of course put something else in. So I right click, fetch clip, and I'll just choose our 360 clip here, drop that in here, and as you can see, now I have two clips, my foreground and my background clip, feeding into the projection comp node, into the frustum to wall node. Alright, and here again I can of course grade everything individually, so I'll choose my frustum foreground node, and I can make it, for instance, very, very blue, a little bit darker. Okay, so this is very blue, and my background I can make the opposite, make it very red and dark, and again I can create all sorts of layers on each and every one of these nodes. And if I want to grade everything in context, I can go to the top level node where both are merged together, choose this layer, and now make everything bright or dark together, or however I wish. Let's look at one more example here, and in this case I'll choose our 360 clip here, tell LiveFX that it is 360 spherical projection, and now I'm going to enable frustum highlight. Let's see what that does. So what I have in here is also a very simple node tree. Here's our source QuickTime node, and it feeds into the EQ to wall node, which configures the projection for the LED wall that we can look at here in the Stage Manager. And on that occasion, let me again lift my camera up just a little bit and push it back. Okay, something like this. So as you can see, we have our frustum highlight here, and we have these two layers on the projection node. And there's the frustum inner layer, and if I pause the video real quick and go to the Fill Matte menu, we can see that the frustum to wall node is feeding into the matte field of this layer and has the alpha enabled. If I go in here, I can see that the frustum to wall node creates an alpha channel of my wall, or of the frustum on the wall, and this alpha channel I am using on this layer, frustum inner. There's the plugin feeding into it with the alpha channel enabled, so when I now color grade anything, it only applies to the actual frustum. As you can see, there's another instance of the frustum to wall node. If I select the frustum outer, it's the same thing here, but I'm not just using the alpha channel, I am also inverting it for this layer. And this means when we color grade in here, we affect all of the outer frustum, or the background, so to speak. Okay, before we end this tutorial, one quick thing about the node tree and its interactivity. Of course, you can hover over any node and delete it, for instance, or use this arrow button to collapse any branch of any node, like so. You can pan around the node tree using space drag, and you can zoom in the node tree using Option or Alt and your mouse wheel, or drag up and down. Okay. Then, what I want to show you real quick is how to replace a clip. Let's assume on our projection comp here we have all sorts of fancy layers that do all sorts of cool things with our footage, make it darker, brighter, composite, frustum borders, God knows what. But what we now want to do is replace our source clip, and there's a really quick way to do this. Let me create a version real quick. Go back to the node tree of the just created version, and now I right click, go import clip, and I choose a different 360 clip, this one here. hit open, and it gets attached to your cursor. I can now hover over any of the nodes here, and I can choose whether I want to insert this clip as a layer and into either front or matte of bespoke layer, so here in the fill matte menu essentially, or whether I want to replace any given node. And that's exactly what I want to do here, so let me choose that. And as you can see, now we're projecting a different clip. But we have maintained all the grade and everything in our layer stack here on the projection node, EQ to wall. And we don't have to redo all that. And going back to versions, I still have my old clip with the beach scene, and I can simply go back and forth. Okay, that's it for this tutorial. I hope this was useful to you. Just as a reminder, what I have enabled here in this tutorial is this setting in here, layers and schematic, set to no layers. So in my node tree, I navigate nodes, and on the layer stack, I navigate layers on the selected node. All right, that's it. See you next time. Bye.